I like Brett Yormark, the new commissioner for the Big 12, was introduced here recently. Of course, at AT&T Stadium.
Big 12 Media Days.
Yeah, but Big 12 Media Days. What were your impressions of him, obviously, with his first public remarks addressing the direction of the conference? And what are you feeling about the direction given some of the changes that we're going to be seeing possibly under Yormark's direction here?
Yeah, I mean, he's a New Yorker. And, he's basically spent his entire life and career out in the New York area. He did, move around to Chicago for a bit and worked for NASCAR as well. So he's been around. Look, he's extremely sharp. He was the CEO of the Brooklyn Nets by the time he was 36 years old. He helped them get from New Jersey to Brooklyn and was instrumental in that move and making it happen. And, he's aggressive. He's exactly what this conference needs at exactly the right time. He talked at Big 12 Media Days last week, about being open for business. And, you hear some of the comments thereafter from athletic directors across the conference, and they're echoing that sentiment. And so in this ever-changing world of conference realignment, to the aggressor go the spoils here. And, there's still a lot that needs to play out in terms of, can the Big 12, get some of the residuals from the Pac-12? But, look, that's, to me, Kev, the most important part is they've got their TV rights deal up in 2025. The Pac-12 has taken its to market already. And so, I mean, with SEC and the Big Ten, on the hook right now for close to or over $100 million for each school with its television revenue, and the Big 12, at around just north of $40 million, which is third amongst the Power Five. They're going to have to figure out a way to not only, increase their amount of TV revenue, but, try to close the gap as much as they possibly can. And, the status quo is not going to do that. The status quo without Texas and Oklahoma is probably going to be less than what they had in their last deal. So they're going to have to figure out something to spice it up a little bit and try to close that gap, because that's what everybody's concerned about. It's the haves versus the have-nots. And, you think about, losing money 2-1 every year to the SEC and the Big Ten. You're going to fall behind if you're in the ACC, the Big 12, or the Pac-12.
Now, Ari, it's actually interesting that you talked about revenue. It reminds me of the ACC commissioner at their media days saying that, every measurable metric, they're doing great except revenue, which, as me and you both know, revenue is the metric that these organizations are working off of. And with that being the case, how do you do that with the understanding of, if you can't get quality as Texas and OU are going, there's only so many programs of that level of caliber that the Big Ten and the SEC are basically hoarding at this point. Is the only other way to get revenue, instead of quality, go with quantity and just have a whole bunch of inventory in games? And what are the boundaries of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a few things there. So first off, to what Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, said yesterday at ACC Media Days, he kind of went to the old talking points, about collegiality and not making this a sport of commercialism, which is a great thing to say. And forever that's the way it's gone, and it's been, not a game of consumerism for everybody, for the players, and a game of consumerism for everybody else, right? So, I mean, in the same vein where he's talking about not making the game commercialized or not making college sports too commercialized, he mentioned the sponsor of the ACC championship game, which is hilarious. So, and it's funny because he unlike George Kliavkoff, the commissioner of the Pac-12, and Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, those guys are outsiders. The presidents of these universities hired, that's who hires a commissioner. And so Phillips is an insider. He's a longtime administrator and athletic director. He was the athletic director at Northwestern before taking over at ACC. So, shows you kind of the divide between, what some presidents view as the changing tide of college athletics versus, the status quo. And that's, what Jim Phillips is sort of out there trying to peddle. In terms of how do you make up the revenue, I mean, I certainly think, there's a quantity factor here. If the Big 12 were to add, say, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, how much more does that increase the value? A little bit, certainly. It gives you a Utah-BYU rivalry game. It gives Colorado back a conference. I don't know that it moves the needle that much. Oregon and Washington, two valuable schools and programs, but not valuable enough to get to the Big Ten. Look, I think what we're looking at here is the potential for the elephant in the room, and that would be Apple and Amazon. You know, Apple has a market cap that is 10 times that of Disney. So, I mean, think about that. Apple could buy and sell all of Disney's parks, all of Disney's movies, Star Wars, and everything 10 times over. So if Apple wanted, they could basically blow out the entire sports industry. They could own it all and then some. And so they've already started to get into sports. You know, they have one game a week on Major League Baseball. They've got they've got
They just
the
added MLS,
package.
yeah.
Right, and they just paid twice as much for the MLS's last deal the MLS got. And I mean, give me any old Big 12 football game on any Saturday, and that number is going to do significantly more than any MLS game, including the MLS championship game. So if Apple paid twice as much as MLS's last deal, and they don't, you know, MLS does nothing compared to like college football. If Apple wanted, they could, you know, outbid everybody for the Big 12, and that's, you know, I've been talking a lot about that lately because it's too early to move away from linear television entirely. However, if you really wanted to make just a crazy move and sell all of your inventory to Apple, and not saying that this is on the table or even in the offing, but let's just say you went to market and you said to Apple, you could take all of our inventory, how much would you pay us for it? You'd be moving away from linear television. It would be, you know, certainly it would be, you know, revolutionary because it just doesn't happen. Would you be giving up something by not being on ESPN, by not having, you know, those games on Fox? That could be, Reggie, just to think like a home run type hit here to try to make it up. But there's other ways too in terms of creativity and certainly when you go to Apple or Amazon. I mean, Amazon's in this too. You know, you could offer ancillary programming as well in addition to sort of feed into that, where you could do like Hard Knocks types of series for these schools. So, you know, I would think if there's some kind of a Hail Mary to get you close, you'd want to add as many as you can from the Pac-12, and then, you know, and then just try to go YOLO on an Apple TV deal that takes you off of linear television.
Dallas Cowboys pre- and post-game host and Sirius XM's Big 12 Radio, Ari Temkin, joining us right here on the Get Right with Reggie KG on 105.3 The Fan. Last thing for me when it comes to the college front here, obviously the explosion when it comes to not only realignment, the amount of money involved. Where ultimately do you see this going when it comes to the kinds of realignment that could still be taking place? Or if we are going to, for at least maybe a year or two, settle down when it comes to realignment and what that looks like across the country?
Yeah, it doesn't seem, Kev, that that's going to be the case. You know, it's so I think the order of operations here is the Pac-12 has taken its television deal to market, and so they basically have 30 days right of first refusal to its current partners. So they go and they meet with Fox and see what kind of an offer they get from Fox, and then they take it to market. They'll meet with probably NBC, they'll probably meet with CBS, they'll probably meet with Amazon, they'll probably meet with Apple, probably meet with ESPN, and then George Kliavkoff, the commissioner of the Pac-12, will go back to the member institutions and say, here's the best deal we can get. At that point, I'd imagine Brett Yormark would swoop in and say, oh, that's the offer you're getting? Well, if you guys came to the Big 12, we can get X. And without taking it to market, have a pretty good idea of what it could look like. Now, the drivers here are the networks. Make no mistake about it. The ESPN orchestrated Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC. Fox orchestrated USC and UCLA to the Big Ten. So it's sort of up to them in terms of what they want, and them being the TV networks. So, you know, we'll see. I would imagine that the Big 12, with the additions of some of those Pac-12 schools, would be the most valuable, but I'm not sure. The Pac-12 seems to think very highly of itself, even without UCLA and USC. But what this is moving towards, Kev, is what it's been moving towards, which is sort of a professionalization to a certain degree of college sports, and people are upset with that. They're aghast. But again, it's been professional for everybody other than the players for a long time now. So at the very least, they're not lying about what they are anymore. Now at least they're out in the open saying what they are. You know, I've talked a lot about the idea of the potential for a relegation system, you know, because what you have is you've got the SEC and the Big Ten with 16 teams apiece, and you've alienated the rest of the country. because if they're now going to have a college football playoff expansion, which does not include, by the way, good job, ACC, Pac-12, and Big Ten for voting against expansion, because now you might not get automatic qualifiers from the rest of the Power 5. So you're going to have the Power 2, which are probably not going to want automatic qualifiers because that means less bids for their teams. So you're probably going to have a playoff that basically is the Big Ten versus the SEC. But if you're them, how do you keep the rest of the country engaged? Because you've only got 32 teams basically playing for everything. And so, I mean, relegation's been something we've been talking about. Actually, Greg Sankey at SEC Media Days was asked specifically about this, and, he certainly downplayed that notion. I mean, it's far-fetched, to say the least. You'd have to get buy-in from current institutions, but it's funny to me how, Texas and OU, USC, they leave, and some of these schools that have been embedded in these conferences, Mississippi State, Purdue, they're not going to get Indiana. They're not going to get a free ride forever. In the same way that the Texas and OU have turned their backs to the Big 12 for that same reason. So, again, far-fetched, but I could see it potentially going there because they have to engage the country. And if you basically shut out access to a playoff and only to those 32 programs, you're disengaged and alienating the rest of the country.
Ari Temkin of Sirius XM Big 12 Radio, also the pre and post game host for your Dallas Cowboys radio network. That relegation thing. I mean, we talked about it, but I didn't only just now thought about the idea of how that kind of regionalizes the sport. I've been kind of lamenting the way that the regionalization of the sport is gone, and some of these, some of these teams that would be 6-win, 7-win, 8-win teams almost feel like their seasons aren't important, and having a secondary tier, even though that would be a secondary tier, would actually kind of make those games important again. But in a different vein, right? Because what I actually wanted to ask you about, are you as sick as I am of these coaches complaining about NIL when Texas Tech just sets up like an NIL trust and everybody gets a $25,000 NIL stipend basically, and it sounds a lot like a payroll to me. Are you as tired as I am?
Oh yeah, I mean it's absurd. I mean, look, you had a system set up for 100 years one way, and overnight it changed dramatically. And so, yeah, you got people that have been embedded in this system for a long time that suddenly had the rug pulled out from underneath them, and they're suddenly coming up with all these issues like okay, yeah, it's hard to manage the locker room now that you've got guys making different amounts of money. Like, oh no, that's too bad. It's crazy. Kirby Smart, he flew from Atlanta or from Athens to San Antonio for the Texas High School Coaches Association convention this week before SEC Media Days, or last week before SEC Media Days. And he actually made the statement while speaking that it cost him $35,000 to fly from Athens to San Antonio because, he's not going to fly commercial. He's going to gas up the private jet. The audacity to complain, and all of these, I'm happy they're making money, I'm blah, 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 blah. Every one of them, when they complain about it, they will always add I'm happy they're making money, except that this and this and that and the other. And yet Kirby Smart has the audacity to complain about NIL when it cost him $35 for a flight. $35,000 for a flight. Like, what a ridiculous waste of money.
I love the Lane Kiffin. Sorry, continue.
No, and you're complaining about little money here or there that will grow over time. It's ridiculous. The biggest thing that people worry about is enticements. We don't want it to be an enticement. It's not the intention of what it was meant to be. And it's like, well, I mean, I don't know if you know this. It's been an arms race for facilities. Those are enticements. They've been using enticements to get kids to go to your school for 100 years. So if they're going to entice kids to go to school for some money, I'm okay with that. But a lot of people don't seem to be okay with that. I don't understand why.
Yeah, we're all enticed to jobs by salaries. I just love the Lane Kiffin, it's going to be harder to do our jobs, basically, Lane Kiffin, Nick Saban, all of them. And I just want to quote Mad Men, where Don Draper goes, and that's what the money is for.
Right. You're also very highly compensated. This is a evolve or die society. I'm sorry that things have changed within your role. You can go do something else. You always hear coaches like Dabo Swinney, I'll go coach high school football. Go do it. Go do it. See if you can make $11 million a year. See if you can make $15 million a year. Oh, you won't? Oh, okay. Then stop complaining.
All right, we're going to have you back to talk about the actual football because
That was very good. It was very good.